In this episode, I sat down with one of my athletes, Thomas Nobbs, and we wanted to talk about the Edmonton Half Marathon, the fiasco that is the Edmonton Marathon, what it was like from an athlete's perspective to navigate that, go through that, what it potentially took away from an athlete like him, some of the age groupers I coached, what they lost out on, and then also talked about his race and the phenomenal breakthrough he had and how this really sets up his trajectory for Chicago Marathon and beyond as we work towards LA 2028. So hopefully you find lots of great information and insights and takeaway from this, and maybe a little bit more nuanced conversation about the Edmonton Marathon fiasco than what you're currently seeing online. All right, here we are, a couple days post half. I mean, we haven't talked. I mean, you and I talk all the time, but we haven't talked on the camera a while because it's been a while since you've raced and done something big. So, wanted to touch base here again and talk about Edmonton champs, the half champs that you're in. I'm sure we'll get into the controversy piece of it a little bit too, but wanted to chat with you kind of about your half build, how this is looking leading into Chicago, and some of the things that you did that really kind of made you excel.
Yeah, no, 100%. We had a great chat right after the race, and I think that was, pretty exciting. And I think before all the news headlines and cover stories came out, I think, both of us were still very pumped just with what we saw in terms of fitness. And it's also just like coming off a big block of training. You're just like, am I fit? I feel tired every day, like, that kind of thing. And so, uh, it's kind of cool just to see like, oh, like it's all there. You just need to take away a little bit of mileage, and then suddenly you're flying. So it's a cool experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'll call myself out for this. Like I literally just put a video out like a week ago or 2 weeks ago about you don't need a tune-up race for a marathon. And I think in the video I referenced, I was like, literally, Tom is going to be doing one like a week after this video comes out. But for us, it really wasn't so much as a like tune-up race. Like, oh, like what can you run over half marathon to see what it is? Like you tapered for 2 days. You had a big workout on the Tuesday before. For us, it was really going in and racing. It was also a rare year in that there was a really good field of the Canadian champs. Like, not to take away from previous fields, like Cam and Rory have shown up and, gone after it, but there wasn't the depth like there was this year where I think even through like 6-7K, there was like 7 guys, right? There was 3 Olympians in that field. Justin's gone to world champs, right? Like you've run 209. It was a great field and a great opportunity for you to go out there and actually race people. I think especially since, Marathon Project ended up being a time trial after about 25K, give or take. And McCurdy was a time trial from like 4 miles. So it was like a good opportunity knowing with Chicago coming up to get in there, race with some guys, be patient, and kind of just get a hard effort in. We watched online, which was pretty cool. They had a live feed, which was great. And it was great to see you kind of enact those things and do all that stuff. But I could talk about what I saw all the time, but I think that people actually want to hear like how did it go down for you? How'd you feel? Like how did the race play out? Like obviously Rory won, you were second, but there was like moves early on, and like it was a great race actually. I think like from actually seeing a bunch of top people go at it. So kind of tell us all about it.
Yeah. I was actually talking with Rory afterwards, and I was like, man, like I haven't had that much fun racing in like a very long time. Like it actually feels like a very long time because I think if I just look back at a few races, like I either got like really strung out with like one or two guys that went out super hard, like Tamarack 10K road championships. I was kind of solo, just trying to reel some guys in. First half this year, Cam went out hard. Justin was kind of fell back a bit, but we were both kind of working in our own speed in no man's land. And then McCurdy was like mostly solo. And so, yeah, just that feeling of like you're running in a pack of guys and you're pointing like this is my corner and then like putting out an elbow because someone's getting in your space. And I actually think I actually race very well. I'm like a not not a dirty Mario Kart racer, but I will make sure I get my line. I like put in a few quick steps on corners, and this was like a pretty windy course, and a few quick steps out, and usually can get some ground on people. And so I actually think I play really well in those environments, but I haven't had that in a very long time. So yeah, super super fun experience. Um, Also, just like the other news head or like the headline that I think no one really said is like this was like you got the top 5 fastest marathoners in Canadian history all lining up for the same event. And I don't think I've ever, I don't think you can look
It's
back in the
ever
last
happened.
5 years and like,
You
no,
can't go back like ever, basically.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
that's how deep this field was.
yeah, and then there was lots of talented guys that came in from the US too. Yeah, the guy from Mammoth Lakes who's like a 102 guy, and yeah, so just lots of great talent. But I think from the gun, it went out pretty quick. It was a little boxed in on the inside. And we were sort of like starting on a downhill, so some of the splits are a bit quick. But yeah, quickly sort of found a pack, and I was feeling great, like feeling pretty sensational. And so I think I gave a couple like okays to the camera because I just wanted to make sure that if you could see that, I know the golf cart was way up front,
Yeah, yeah.
that I was, chilling. I even compared to, my breathing to a couple Olympians around me, and I would I'm just saying, I was breathing very easy and they were breathing much harder than me. So, and then, yeah, we just kind of held pace. I was trying not to lead. That was like the main goal, don't lead, especially for the first 5K. And then, yeah, we kind of had a solid pack of like 8 or 9 guys through 5K. I think I saw like a 14:41, 14:40 type 5K split. Um, and then, yeah, sort of starting to race a bit. It seemed like each K, one guy would sort of take the lead. So like Cam took the lead for maybe like a K or two. I saw John like sort of up front for a second there. Justin like was sort of in the lead.
Andrew for a
And then
bit. Yeah.
yeah, Andrew was leading for a bit for sure. And so I think guys were just like sort of feeling it out. You could tell some guys were like getting a little excited from like 5 to 8K and thinking like, oh, this is my day. And then sort of like slowly like fell away. Um, and then let's see, I think probably after 8K, so like 8 to 10K, started to string out a little bit more. And we're sort of winding through some of like the upper end neighborhoods, and feeling pretty smooth. At one point, it was before the race. Rory said, "Is anyone gonna like t take the lead, or take some polls or something like that?" And I said, "Yeah, just say the word pineapple and I'll do it." And I was joking. And it was kind of funny. I think it was around 9 or 10K. He said pineapple, and I said, I was like, bro, this is my half marathon PB pace.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't get a comment back, but it was kind of weird. Like I said that, and I was holding pace, and suddenly I was in the front and I was leading, and I was actually leading by a meter or two. And I think there's a
Yeah.
photo that we can sort of add in here,
Yeah.
that just kind of shows that. But I was stringing people on, and I just I like races where we hold the pace. Like I don't want this to, we back off to like 3 minute Ks. This is a half marathon that half marathon time I've run so many times before. Um, and then we just like let it go, and it's just like, it's just a sit and kick. And like I've got Andrew Alexander around me, I've got like Justin, like I'm pretty like both of those guys have way faster like 10K PBs, and I don't know if Cam is somewhere there. And so I just didn't want it. And Rory was there too at that time, so I'm like, I don't I need this to hurt as long as possible, and I know I can probably do that one of the best. And then I think about like 12K, Rory's just made a move. So pretty definitive move, and pretty definitive surge. And he, yeah, sort of went off. Although he was only like 20 seconds, like people kept saying like
Yeah.
20 seconds, like 20
Yeah.
seconds. And he kind of just hung out there. So we were kind of going the same speed, but he was like a bit ahead. Um, and then, yeah, just navigating back. It's sort of like a subtle downhill for most of the first
Out.
half.
Yeah.
And then you turn and it's a subtle uphill. So it's a bit of a grind. And I was like leaning into the hill and trying to work on that. Andrew was coming up with on me, like sort of beside me or in front of me. And then I sort of matched that. And I kind of just found that every time someone tried to pass me by a step or two, I was able to come up with them. And Ben Preisner and him were there. And then, yeah, I just kind of kept matching moves, and then I just kept pressing the pace, in 15 to 19K or 18K, and I just wanted to hold it. And I feel like I just kept hitting a little surge, little kick. And then I do remember like, yeah, just 20, 21. I'm like, man, this is a really like 20. I think it was like they passed 19.5. 19.5, I was like, okay, I got 1,500 meters to hurt, like about, or a mile. And I was like, man, this is like the straightaway is like really long. Like, but I was so dead set in the last like 5 to 7K. I was like, I want to hold at the slowest 257 per K so that I think I can go sub 63, and that would be like really exciting to me. Um, and then yeah, anyway, we just kind of carried it on from there, and I was able to just hold pace and keep kicking. Again and again, I guess, and had all those gears. And then, yeah, we sort of finished, and that was that.
Yeah, it was interesting. So we were watching, and I remember I think Rory made his first move a little bit before the turnaround.
Right.
And I remember seeing the clock, and I said to Elena, I was like, that's not right. Like, I like, you look at the field, it's getting disintegrated on like 64-minute pace. And it's like, that's marathon pace for like 4 or 5 of these guys. Like,
Yeah.
it's, you know, like, there's no way Rory, like, obviously, I have huge props for Rory. Like, what he's doing is amazing. There's no way Rory is destroying this field at 64-minute pace. And that's where you're like, okay, maybe the clock on the TV's off or something like that. And then I remember watching Rory like checking his watch an insane amount in the last kind of like, because the camera was like right on him for the last
Yeah,
like
yeah.
2K basically, and being like, hey, something's off here. And then you see him run 64. I'm like, hey, that's like completely wrong. There's no way. And so it was super interesting because you and I chatted afterwards, and obviously we saw Strava updates and such. And on a course like that with all the corners, it's never going to measure 21.1. Like it'd be incredibly hard to, especially
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the lane changing you guys had to do for anybody watching, like with the cones and everything, which was weird. But to see 21.8, 21.9, 22.0 on there was really telling about how much it was off. And so what was kind of the conversation like across the elites there once you guys kind of all congregated and probably were seeing your watches going?
Yeah, I mean, I was just sort of baffled. I mean, I was pretty elated. Like there's actually probably not. I don't think there's a photo of me crossing, but I was like celebrating a little bit because I was just
Yeah.
pretty stoked to come second.
Yeah, second in a field like
Um,
that, a national champ for
and
sure.
yeah, like adrenaline was like, very, very high just from the racing experience and then pulling it off. I remember checking my watch like once. Like I think I pay a lot of attention to like average pace and my effort. Average pace, current pace, and my effort. I think a lot about those. And then sometimes I'm checking like the distance to be like, okay, how
What's
how much
left?
longer do I have to
Yeah.
go? How long do I have to hurt? And I think I remember looking down once and I was like, I think I saw like a 103.46 at some point, and I was just like, yeah, that doesn't totally match up. Because we beforehand, I think we talked, so we were like, hey, 256s is this, 257s is this, 258s is this, just to have like some sort of like mental feedback. And then afterwards, yeah, we sort of just like were chatting, giving props to Rory, and he gave some props, and then I think he said like, yeah, course was 800 meters long, and I was like, oh, what? Like that makes sense. I wasn't really affected by it at the time. For the next 3 hours, I was pretty fine with it. But I think more so just sort of like looking at the data and then looking at what this means and stuff after the fact. I think that's where we kind of saw things. And then I think I was doing cool down with a couple guys, and they were like just talking about all their travel home that they have to do, and they're like, "Oh, I had a bad race, and I and it was long, so I don't know what this means for me right now in my fitness and where I'm at." So yeah, just a lot of like sort of puzzling pieces there, and I got to chat with Truett Haynes the day before the race. Really nice guy, and he told me he was shooting for sub 70, and I was like, okay, I think that guy's totally got it. Just based on what he was telling me, and I've been following his training, and then on cool down we passed him and Rory, just my cool down group, and I asked him what he got, and he shouted like 71, and I was like, oh, that's awesome, like I think that's
That's
a PB for him, so
yeah.
he was stoked, but simultaneously I was like, that's like for a guy like that that would mean a lot. Like he was also, you know, just over 70 because of that course distance change. So yeah, maybe some mixed feelings, but I think it only really settled like the next day and when the news stuff came out and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I want to say in that, like, I think people are missing. I saw Natasha posted something about this correctly. Jaden Keeler crushed it on the women's side. Like,
Oh yeah.
if you remove the extra on that course, she's not far off the Canadian record. Like, it might be
Yeah.
second or third fastest all time in her
Yeah.
debut. And so obviously, I'm talking to you and I've got age groupers that are in there, but when you look at like the importance of what that would have been like for her to potentially, as a brand new, out of the NCAA, first time sponsored, like if that course is accurate, she's potentially getting a new bonus from ASICS, like her first race for being
Okay.
Canadian record and or Adidas, sorry, I should say that correctly. Um, you know, that's just a missed opportunity, I think, for her. And you start to see different stories like this, and maybe we can touch on it here. But one of the things I went to after the race, and you and I didn't talk about it till a day or so after, because I didn't want to like rain on the parade of how epic yours was, because obviously you got robbed of a PR. But when we're working at this level for world rankings to try and get into, say, world road running champs in Copenhagen, or be higher up in the rankings to be a faster athlete that bigger races can get, like that 600 and however many meters they're quoting it is over now, that massively affected your points total for this race, which has a very negative outcome on your potential selectability for world road running champs, even though you were second, and beat other guys who were in it. But because we have a points based system, and we don't know what that means long term, obviously we're going to continue to keep hammering away and race to the best of your ability. But you look at everybody, I feel for people, like I had 3 people in the marathon that if you take the time off at their appropriate paces would have run a BQ that were robbed of it. And I think that
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
crazy.
it's really hard. Like, I mean, I feel it for you, I feel it for them, I feel it for Jaden, obviously. But you look at it, it's like there's probably so many stories like that, especially when you see the research on the clustering around certain time barriers, right? Like 3 hours, 305, 310. Like, how many of these people have been trying super, super hard to do that to then be robbed? And I get it, that's one thing, mistakes happen, but I was pretty disappointed in the response right away from the race directors, AC, and the CBC article to just say like, nope, we measured it, it's all good. Like basically saying to Olympians, top age groupers, like amazing people that are doing all this, no, like you are completely wrong and we are infallible. We're not even going to check, basically.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really disappointing. I'm glad since then they've said, oh yeah, we screwed up and such, but unfortunately for everybody who was affected by that race, there's nothing you can do to take it back. Like, you can't, there's no precedent for being like, okay, we know it was 600 and blah, blah, blah meters off. So we're going to take each person's pace and remove that time, because it changes so many variables in terms of how people were adjusting pacing at the halfway point and 3/4 point and all those things. And so it's a bit of a mess. I can see why everybody's talking about it, because it's a friggin' disaster. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think especially like some courses they don't overlap like as much as this one I think. Or actually I mean most courses actually there's wrong turns that
Yeah.
people make. Like
USA championships. Yeah.
there's like a lead bike that goes the wrong way. I think that's pretty common, but the mismeasured course, I think in our sport where that matters to the meter, like I think you don't hear about that often. So I think that's why it's sort of going a bit viral. But also the half and the full were both affected. So like that's
Yeah.
all participants were affected.
Everybody basically. Yeah. Except for the 10 and
And
5.
I think that's the biggest part. Like it's already viral if the elites go the wrong way or if
Yeah.
the leader is led off course. But I think that's where it's like sort of a bigger storyline. Yeah, I definitely feel for people who trained for 5 months and then paid a good amount of money to come and compete and all this stuff. And then, with how also with how competitive it is to get into other races too. It's like, oh, can you just double back and find a way to get into Toronto Waterfront or something like that? I don't. I think that might be challenging. So yeah, and I think for people who are listening, it's like, oh, why can't you just like subtract like that many meters? It's like, okay, well, unless there's a timing mat at 21.1K, you can't just say, oh, this person crossed the line. Like at 21K, not 21.1, you could have just stopped, puked your guts out, or just like fallen over and died, right? So you can't necessarily say that. One thing I thought of was like if they appropriately added the distance, just this is basically just for me, pretty much, or like elites, is like, oh, called it 21.7 or 21.8K in World Athletics, put a little asterisk beside it, and then adjusted my point score according to what that what that
Performance
value
would
would
be. Yeah.
be. I was like that could be one small way, like a small thing of retribution. I don't know, but um, yeah. Otherwise, it's kind of just like a yeah a nightmare of a puzzle. So yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I'm not one to complain just for the sake of complaining, and I think that's what I've seen a lot of this race. Like, I've been racking my brain to try and think, okay, what's the solution for everybody? Like, from like refunds to entry, those like whatever. I'm like, I don't even know what you do in this situation. Like,
yeah,
it's fairly unprecedented. Like, I made a comment on Instagram somewhere where it was like, Canadian champs or Canadian half champs saw USA half champs and was like, hold my beer, like we're gonna screw this up harder, right? And it was like, at least at like USA champs, you can kind of rectify that because they can go to World Athletics and be like, we actually screwed this up. They were up by X amount of time. It was impossible. They would have been caught. Broadly speaking, I know it's not exactly accurate. But like here, it's like, well, the finishing order is what it is. And sorry, like, I don't know what you do. And the same for the age groupers. It's like, what do you do? Like, Boston's not going to look at Edmonton's results and there's no recourse. Like, Edmonton can't go to Boston and be like, hey, can you just like factor our race differently in your giant mess of calculations that you do? Right. So it's just a crummy situation. And I think, I just don't even know what needs to be done. I think, again, what frustrated me the most was like the race director just like staunchly defending it against everyone. Basically, it was like, there's no evidence. We measured it. And like, I've been a part of national championships, like hosting U Sports, like our Canadian Collegiate Champs. AC, we hosted national cross country champs for 4 years. I've helped with road races that are certified as race director and assistant race director. The second there's construction on a course, you have to re-certify that course. Like, even if curbs are done, right? So when I saw their first statement about like, oh, no, we're certified, we had this, but then they're talking about all the construction, like, oh, we had this detour and such. It's like, well, did you start the recertification process? Because if not, then you actually haven't done what you're supposed to. And that flagged for me right away that this was something where the organizers were just like doubling down, because the back history for people who haven't paid attention to Edmonton, they've been the champs a couple times and the distance has been off multiple times before. This isn't the first time that their
mm,
distance has been off. This is the most egregious of it. And it was long. It was short a couple years ago, I think by 200 meters, 300 meters. But I think that's why they took it so personally and like doubled down right away, because they're like, no, we've been here, we've been accused of this. No, we had a measure, we did the things, and they probably did do the right things. There's just somewhere where there was a mistake, and I think if you're a race director, and I say the same thing about coaching, it's like, you're in this for athletes. There's no job without athletes, right? So the central tenet is doing right by athletes. And I just thought that response was a bit tone deaf, where you've got people who train their whole lives, whether they're age groupers or elites, trying to do this. And I think I want to give props to Rory and Natasha in particular, because a lot of younger athletes are not in a position to speak out because there's fear of reprisal or uncertainty of what that might look like. You can't touch Rory or Natasha. They're just like, they're going to say what they want because they've earned it. They're multiple time Olympians. They're, some of the best we have. And so I want to give massive kudos to both. I was chatting with Rory a little bit about it afterwards on Instagram, and both him and Natasha were brilliant in the way they like approached it. I think like they were right to call it. They were right to bring the attention to it. And I think without them, it probably would have got glossed over, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. It's also just like, yeah, it's just interesting to not consult with athletes too. Like again, I think we both talked with Rory, and I don't. I'm pretty sure none of the men were consulted, and so you're essentially saying that you had like plus or minus, 10 to 12 plus or minus Olympians, or like the fastest marathoners in Canadian history on men and women, and you're like, yeah, you guys have a combined amount of experience of like maybe like 150 to 200 years in competing in races, and you're the best, and we're like not gonna like chat with you on like what did you experience, what did you see. So yeah, it's quite funny. And although people say like, oh, GPS is off, I actually think GPS is like pretty dang good. I don't hear of any like crazy things like that anymore, where
Not
it's
like
like,
that. Not like that.
unless you're running like cross country, or in the marathon, I have seen it possible where 400 to 600 meters is added because you didn't take the tangents and you were kind of carried by the masses. So like that happens, but um yeah, GPS is just getting better and better every day. Every GPS watch they put out is like yeah, pretty incredible. So
Well, I
there's
think
a ton of data points out there.
totally. And it wasn't like one person's GPS, right? Like every single person's. The other
Mm,
thing I think about too, I said this a little bit earlier, but to elaborate, is how can you like how can you be a fan of the sport and look at that race and go, oh yeah, it was completely accurate? Like if you're the race director, if you're people involved going, yeah, you know what? It's completely normal for a bunch of guys that have run 61 to 63 minutes to have their doors blown off on 64-minute. Like that field blew up, right? Like Rory took over that field and broke things apart, right? And you think that's what's going to happen, that on that day everybody who's faster than the pace that was run just blew up, and only Rory hammering. Like if you watch him on the camera, you can tell when Rory is like hammering. He was pushing in the middle of that race to only run 64 minutes. I was like, there's no way. Like just look at, like watch the race and you'll tell. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't think anything's going to happen. I think there'll be this like shitstorm of social media for like 2 weeks, and then Edmonton will like admit they did wrong and they're going to do better and they're going to apologize, and then they're going to ramp up their marketing for next year, and then they will like never be given a national championship again. That's all I think is going to happen, to be honest.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, should we what else should we cover? Do
A
you think we
positive.
should talk about
Let's talk about Chicago.
yeah, maybe like what this indicates towards Chicago potentially?
Yeah. Go for it. Where are you feeling? Kind of 7.5, give or take, on day of filming, 7.5 weeks out. Where are you feeling from a confidence perspective? What did you take away from this race?
Yeah, I think the huge point of confidence. I think it was even the first. It was the first pickup I do. So usually I do like 20 minutes warm up, and then I do like a 60-second pickup at tempo pace. And I think when I first did that pickup, that was like after the 2 days taper. So finally, 2 days, just one day of 60 minutes, one day of like 40-ish minutes. And then I was like flying, and I was like, whoa, this is like this is like a feeling when you come down from altitude, just coming down from higher mileage. So I think that was cool just to see like, oh, it's all there. You just haven't had this feeling of like this is like the superhuman effect you should get from coming down from mileage in general, which everyone should experience. And then I think just the other thing too is just that we're doing all the right things from a training perspective, and then also Ottawa. I've been hitting the treadmill for a number of big sessions, but I have not. I've had to adjust to effort based on it's humid, it's hot, and your paces are slower, and you're like, am I getting faster? Am I just like in the same fitness? And I think the conclusion is, well, with more mileage and running, just trying to shoot for the right effort. Yeah, I guess you're in more like 62-minute shape for a half. And so I think that was pretty cool. And then I think definitely a huge confidence booster to say like, oh, you are comfortable going out hard in a race. Like I was looking at my watch, it was like I saw some 253s in there, I saw some 255s. I'd say the bulk of that race I was averaging 256s per K. And so if that's like quite comfortable, then running closer to 3 minute Ks than my last marathon doesn't seem so intimidating. And I think it's honestly that mental shift that's probably the biggest takeaway. In addition to training, we don't need to change anything drastic as well. So yeah, just staying consistent and just trying to get the most out of every single day. I've created a countdown of days to go, so I'm trying to make everything the best possible over the next like 4 weeks in particular, but also the next however many days it is. I'll have to see what that is.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think it's cool to hear that because, when I thought about this race and what it might mean, it was like, for me, it was like, can we close a couple gaps, right?
Mm.
What's it like racing with people? Because Chicago will be your first marathon where you've actually raced with people. Knock on wood, but like, I mean, the group is there. It's an epic field, right? So it's like, can we settle in? Can we race with people? Can we pace well within a group? Can we race, right? Because everything we've done, I would say, in the last 2.5 years has basically been TTing, right? With the exception of maybe Ottawa 10K, where you're like racing with guys the last couple of years. But everything's been TTing, and it's a different skill to TT than it is to actually get in and race. And so I think knowing for you, we've talked about this and I've talked about this, publicly. We're always thinking about what things can we try to implement. So, excuse me. So when the big dance, when we really need to do something, we have all this data point that you can be confident and I can pull from and go, okay, we can do these things and then we can launch. And so looking at, okay, a 2 day taper, I remember before Toronto, I think last year, a couple years back, you're like, no, can I like taper for like 4 days, five, like just to like get like my legs back, right? And so I see all these things where it's like, okay, well now maybe we actually don't need to taper because we trust that our legs are good, right? Like maybe we don't do 2 workouts the week of, but we keep the volume up. All these little things that start adding up. So every time you step on the line, you're like, I'm in it. And I think what's really cool is you've shown over the last 2.5, 3 years now that you're not just good every once in a while, like you're consistently nailing races and showing up. And if I look at that as a coach and what we're trying to do ahead of LA 2028, we want that confidence where, let's say it's, April of 2028 and we're chasing a time or a world ranking or something. It's like, we're very, very confident that every time we take a swing, we're within the ballpark of where we need to be. And so for me, seeing this and seeing you go out there and compete with the top people Canada has to offer, because it was one of the best fields I've seen assembled for Canadian champs in quite some time, should give us both confidence that we don't have to question if you belong in that field now. It's just, can we keep doing the things that put you in those fields that move the needle to you running the times that we need to run to be able to get out there and actually go to LA?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I think yeah, I think you're taking a very very analytical approach, or just like making the right judgment calls and training to adjust, small things here and there. I think a lot of people, might change up their entire taper, or like they'll change up their all their final workouts in the lead up. And it's like, okay, well, if something does work, you should it takes a lot more to make small, simple adjustments than it does to just write a new workout. Like I think that takes a lot more wisdom, maturity as a coach or experience to understand some of those things. So I see those and I appreciate that. And when I come to you with the things I'm anxious about, you sort of like talking me through it or talking me down from whatever thing I'm anxious about. And then yeah, I'd say for myself, I am pretty proud of like I'd say the last 2 years, like every single half and full marathon that I've shown up for has been a great performance based on the taper we've done, or just a great performance in general. And so, yeah, just knowing that I can show up. I even have like a spreadsheet of things I have to do each day of like the 14 days lead up of like, this is what you got to do for recovery. This is the thing you got to focus on, and like start thinking of sleep here, and all that stuff. So, I'm trying to take also a very scientific approach. I think even for fueling, I've been, yeah, writing it down and journaling what I have. So that's kind of down to a science for both the half and the full, which I appreciate. And yeah, so it just seems like, yeah, things are responding the right way just by having that documented and then making tiny changes here and there. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
If,
it's
if I
exciting.
can, if I could take a learning lesson from that for everybody, you hear people talk about the process all the time. You have to love the process. You got to do the process. Can't focus on outcome and stuff. That's actually what we mean by this. Like, the training is going to happen. We know that for you, but it's like, okay, what is the process of actually getting better? Because at this level, or for anyone who's trying to have a massive breakthrough to reach as close to their potential as they can, it is these little things. What works? What doesn't? Why did it work? Does it repeatedly work so I can know I go to it? Or was it just a confounding variable with something else? And so I think it's one of the things that you're incredibly good at is recording and reflecting upon it and like conversing. Like, hey, why was it this happened? And okay, I know if I do these things, I'm set up well. I'm going to test that again. And it's like, boom, okay, now you've got very reliable and valid data every time we need to go and take a swing. And I think that's one of the things that's allowed you to have repeated success versus sporadic success, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I even like it's honestly like just on the marathon, it's astonishing how many pros I run into, and they're vibe coding their like carb load, and I was like, I don't like, I actually don't get that. It's like, okay, if like especially as a pro, your weight is probably going to stay very close within like a couple kg of what it is. Your carb load would naturally reflect that. If it worked for you once, why would you not copy the exact foods to the exact amount? But I just run into people and they're just like, yeah, I'm just, gonna have a bit of this, have a bit of that. And I don't calorie count or anything like that, but it's just like little things like that where it's just like the final couple days, I feel like they matter quite a bit, or like how many grams of carbs I'm having, race morning of a half, or something like that. So yeah, it's just those little things. And I think you had we were on a I think we were on a phone call, or just like our last sort of like check-in call, and I think you had said something about LA 2028. I think it was just that you have faith in me to, perform and run faster than my 209. But ultimately, a lot of the stuff comes down to, just consistency, but also working on those little one percenters, which I think that was a very helpful reminder for me at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've long thought this, and to talk about the feeling piece, I remember being in Flagstaff 2 years ago now, and talking to a bunch of the pros, like they weren't even taking like they take like a gel or two in a marathon. I was like,
Right.
we're already friggin' doing high carb. Like this is crazy. And I think one of the things, if you look at it from a systematic perspective, in the US in particular, there's so much talent, right? They just have the population, there's so much talent. They can get away with it, where it's like they're just going to be brought up by. But in Canada, like, we don't have talent to waste. Like we can't just have a potential 206 to 208 guy just do kind of whatever for a couple of years and Canada will be great, right? It's like no, we have to make the most out of every single piece that we have. And so, I've very much had that mentality for years where it's like, okay, we can do the same training and do the same things. We don't have the groups, we don't have the altitude, whatever. But the way we're going to get ahead is these little things and the attention to detail and not screwing it up and being proactive and diligent in all the things we do. And like that's really informed my coaching approach. And that's why when I see the traits and the things you're doing, I'm like, that's the type of people that like make it through, that don't just have like one-off blips, right? Because what you don't want is somebody who's like really good for a year. You want to see people who are great for a long period. It's better for the athlete. It's better for the system. It's better for the kids watching you as an athlete to see what that looks like when they're looking up to the next generation. Like I was, Eric, Dylan, and Reed growing up. It was like those guys, and they were just like on, and it was like, okay, that's what it takes to be great at this level. So it's cool to see you go do it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely yeah, there's still lots of little hacks and new things I'm implementing, but yeah, it's good to have a good understanding of what works. I feel like when I was young, I was so insecure and always anxious about things that I was always trying to look for some new thing that I needed to do more of, where there was like stretching or more weights, and it was like a new thing that I was going way too hard on when I was young. So it's just, yeah, the little changes that you can make that make the most amount of impact towards fitness.
Well, and repeatability. Like I think I said this to you when we first started thinking about the long-term marathon project, not the race, the actual project of you doing the marathon. But if you're going to go after this, what you're doing has to be sustainable for at least 4, but more than likely 8 years. Like obviously we're going to do everything we can to go to LA 2028, but you want to be in this for 2 cycles. You don't want to be one cycle and kind of
Yeah.
gone kind of thing. And so I find a lot of athletes don't look at it that framework. It's like, they go through high school, like I could do everything I can to get a college scholarship. And then college, I could do everything I can to get like a pro sponsorship. And you get stuck in this hamster wheel of trying to maximize everything and then like burning out and getting fried or
Yeah.
realizing that it's unsustainable. But if you want to be a long distance runner, you got to look at it and go, can I do this day in, day out for 4 to 8 years? And that's a scary concept. Like nobody wants to look at that. But that's the people that see success. And so it's cool that we're coming up on 3 years into this now. Actually, this fall will be 3, 4. Ooh, I can't
I
count.
think yeah, I mean,
Twenty-three.
Philly was like November, and that
Yeah.
was like 2023. So it'll be
Yeah.
about 3 years coming up
3 years.
in November. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Cool. Anything else you learned that you think would be helpful for people, or anything you're kind of musing in terms of thoughts with training and coaching and all that stuff? Because I imagine some of your athletes will listen to this as well too.
Um, yeah, I think I was just talking with like a couple athletes on some things, and so I think yeah, the paces thing, that's one thing. I think I've the last few weeks or so I've had to sort of like reconcile with this, and it's just like, okay, you could take my 209 and you could say, hey, these, you put into Jack Daniels, get your paces, and it spits out your paces. And some of those paces are really daunting. And sometimes I hit them, and sometimes I very much do not. Like my tune-up workout, or like the full workout that I did on the Tuesday leading into this, because we weren't really tapering, was like 20 minutes at marathon pace and then 17.5 minutes at tempo. And the marathon pace segment was like solid 309s. I was like, yeah, that's good, especially if it's really humid, above 90% humidity. And then the tempo, it was averaging like 303, then 304, and then it was like blew up to like 306s because I didn't want to push to the well, to hold the pace, which you shouldn't really do in tempo anyway. But it's just interesting thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, I was running 306s, just trying to follow the effort based on where I was at on that day, and yet I was still able to go out and run 256s for most of the race, right? And so obviously this is something we've talked about before, but just relearning that. And then what's the other one? I think I have a half marathoner who's gonna, or a guy who's running a half marathon this coming Sunday. And he's like, we've kind of set out a pace that he's never run before, but the conditions, context, and some of the training factors of his current half marathon build are totally different than his previous half marathon build. He was doing like, 60, 65K, and now he's like gotten up to like 83K, and he did, a heat training camp, and he's like crushing splits that are just like what was his like 10K pace bridging on 5K pace before. And so I think trying to change that frame of reference for him and just saying like on the day, you could be able to hold this pace to the whole thing and it could be easy, which is like sort of the thing that was teased out from the Josh Kerr mile world record. But you could surprise yourself on the day. And so I think, yeah, sometimes we sort of limit ourselves. Like I could have gone into this race and been like, okay, well, every race that I do as a half that I have for quite a bit of time since we haven't targeted a half has been like 3 minute Ks or like 258s or something like that. And so, yeah, sometimes you just like don't want to limit or constrain yourself, and just kind of feel it out on the day, but have some expectations that it could be a lot faster than you expect. So, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hopefully people pick up that lesson because it's a hard fought one for most people, but hopefully you'll speed up the learning process. So cool. Well, thanks for taking the time. We'll probably check in before Chicago or something, maybe, depending on how both our lives are looking at that point, because mine is about to get a whole lot busier any day now. So should be fun.
Okay, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for that. And yeah, look forward to the next time we chat.
Awesome. Take care, man.
Thanks.